FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. It's Kerry Lutz. The date is October 6th, 2015. And hey, sometimes when you're thinking things are down and how are we going to get through this? Well, things happen, you deal with people, and it really makes you realize the important things and that most people are fundamentally good and honest and really out to help you as well as themselves. And Danielle Park is with us of jugglingdynamite.com, and Danielle's got some stories about it. So rather than talking about the negativity of the bankers and the unfairness of the current system, Danielle, hey, it's always great to have you on. Let's talk about some of the good things happening, okay?
Yeah, for sure. I think, as I was saying to you, we recently had a student come from Germany, which we're hosting for a while at our house. And, you know, just having the experience again of someone come from far away that you never knew hide nor hair of, and have them fall into your family and realize that you have so much in common, you know, from the other side of the world, that you can be very close in a very quick amount of time. That you know, what I found fascinating is like my son and him are the same age, but and from different countries and different languages, they follow the same music. They listen to the same YouTubers. You know, in a lot of ways, the internet has opened up the world to connectivity with other people and like-minded interests and that sort of thing. And I think we can get too isolationist sometimes when we're in our own, you know, homes or businesses or small worlds. And if we only look at the negative news stories, we can get an impression that the world is, you know, completely crazy and that people are, you know, dangerous and untrustworthy. And I think generally speaking, most people are decent and trying to do the right thing on a daily basis. And I think we shouldn't lose sight of that, you know, because it can be very dark and depressing if you start to buy into that whole belief system.
Yeah. And not only that, but the problems that you're going through, that the world's going through, the financial strains and all that, it really can harden you and make you think that good things don't exist. And you forget that what we're going through now, just like the prosperity before, or the illusion of it, is temporary, and better days are ahead. And you grow by meeting life's challenges and by solving problems. I mean, I don't know about you, Danielle, but I'm kind of at my best, my happiest when I've got a problem. You know, nothing like family or health related, but just a problem in general, business or otherwise, that I have to solve and think in new ways and do things differently. And I think that's such an important thing that everybody, you know, we all have our own set of problems. And
I think, you know, what's really good is that similar to accepting that there are constraints to being alive, right? That human existence, for example, exists within a biosphere of which we are not in total control. There is no such thing as all you can eat from the ocean. The ocean is a finite resource. You know, the idea that there's no such thing as infinite amounts of money, that I like that there's a budget on things. I like that there's a limit on spending and that people don't keep going into debt, because I think it brings out the best in everyone when we have certain parameters of reality that we're supposed to work within and find very constructive, innovative solutions to those issues, you know, and that's where I think brings out the best in people. It's that notion of the finite and the limits, and then figuring out how to be really smart and creative and innovative within those necessary limitations that makes us all at our best, I think.
Oh, for sure. And, you know, getting out of debt, it's not pleasant. And sometimes you have to do things you don't want to do. And like you say, put limits on your behavior, limits on your desires of what you want right now, because you have to think of the future. And I mean, there's a lot of help out there for you once you reorient your thinking and once you really come to terms with the need for change and the need to grow. And those are two fundamental human concerns that I think get overlooked a lot. It's like, well, how are we going to get through this? And you know what? We've always had problems. There's always been, obstacles. And Hey, the way you find true self contentment, however short-lived it might be, is by meeting these challenges and overcoming them and being a better, more whole person than you are now.
Absolutely. And I think that we do have a remarkable amount in common all over the world today. Regular people that are working hard, raising families, trying to look after their health. You want to talk about one of the areas where you have natural constraints is in your own physical body, right? Your own health. So again, going back to if you're just a constant want and you can't control any of your own impulses and you're always wanting more and more and more, it ends up being self-destructive, right? Just the way it is financially, the way it is in terms of businesses and how you manage them, in terms of your own household and family. So I think, as you say, we went through this period where the add debt and stir crowd were convincing everyone that there's no limits. Everything's insatiable and the sky's the limit or the universe is the limit. And I think in this next era, we're learning to work with less and being a lot more efficient with it. And I think that's really cool. That whole, initiative toward more sustainable cities, whether it's being water use and power use in the way that systems are managed within the different areas. I think that's all a very productive thing that we can all get behind. It's not necessary that we're all just brought together behind a war, which is quite a typical model over the centuries, is that somebody yells war and then all of a sudden it's supposed to bring out the best in people because we all rally behind the cause. But I think we can actually do a similar response to something that's not nearly as destructive, but is actually constructive. And that would be figuring out solutions in our finite biosphere, a finite environment that's a lot more intelligent and progressive than some of the things we've been doing in the past. And there's a lot of wonderful initiatives like that right now that are so exciting. It's just, I find that every day I jump out of bed going, wow, what cool stuff are we going to be rolling out today? Now, you're going to have the pushback from the status quo of what has made money in the past and what technology the world has used. And it always comes up against the new innovations that are starting where the world is headed to. And that's the push and pull between some people wanting to keep the rules the same because it serves their older business model and others, trying to push the world forward into the future. This Friday I'm going to New York City and they're having their citiesalive.org is having its 13th annual Green Roof and Wall Conference. And it's a fascinating organization that's all over the world now, and it's doing basically focused on service providers and technology that are doing intelligent things in city settings. So, for example, vertical farming, water management, waste management. That New York City has the largest rooftop gardens in the world for farming. It's a really exciting stuff that's going on there. So we're going to do some touring of some of that. And I just find that's the kind of thing that makes me really excited about where the world is headed, much more than, how crazy the bankers are and the HFT and the crooks that haven't been arrested yet. I mean, that is a pretty dark day when you spend it all on that. And yet at the same time, I think we need to at least keep trying to push that ball forward, because I really do believe that if the world is to get to a better place, we have to get the finance arm back in support of, rather than sucking all the strength out of the world.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if you read about the guy from Citadel. He's a multi-billionaire, and they said he makes $100 million a month. And he's been on a real estate buying binge all over the place, in Chicago, in New York. I mean, buying multi-million dollar homes, and all as a product of HFT. And yes, things do need to be changed. This current system isn't sustainable. It's not going to sustain humanity, and it's not going to lead you to personal satisfaction either. And
well, that's a very frustrating one. I think the article quoted $68 million a month after taxes that Ken Griffin is earning as the head of Citadel. And what I found instantly, I remembered Yeah, that's the one that hired Ben Bernanke as soon as he left the Fed to come as a consultant, which is really repugnant stuff, because basically this is it should be an illegal skimming operation, but sadly in the current regulatory and like room given by the lawmakers controlled by the finance sector, these people are literally getting away with skimming, which is at the cost of every pension fund and legitimate investment enterprise that's trying to raise capital to support, intelligent business, productive business things in the real economy. But I think, I was just talking about this with my colleague. I was saying, I guess many billionaires over time have got that way by taking an advantage, and in some cases an unfair advantage of a opening or a loophole, whether it be running alcohol, running booze, running drugs, whether it be oil magnates in the early days that were basically collecting rent of sorts from, a consumption of something. In this case, it's just order flow. Order flow in the world is making this company and many others like him, quote unquote, hedge funds, who ironically and insanely are given this preferential tax treatment on the profits that they're skimming off everyone. I mean, there's just nothing good about that story. It's a pathetic example of the debauchery that has really overcome public markets and everything that has to be reversed right there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, rentiers, as they're called, and they're just basically skimming a few pennies off of every trade, maybe a few dollars. They don't add any value to anybody except themselves, and somehow they're in a protected class, and nothing can be done about them. The status
and they're
quo
buying off everyone. Yeah. And of course you could, if you were making $68 million a month after taxes, you could pretty much buy anything, right? Anyone, just about. Apparently, all the government officials, all the regulators, all the order flow from these, Charles Schwab sells its order flow for its quote, supposed to be this firm for the little guy, doing what's good for the client, selling the order flow. A whole bunch of companies are doing this. The exchanges, the for-profit exchanges that used to be about providing this reliable utility for the world to trade on are now basically doubling down on selling off order flow out the back door to places like this so they can use and abuse the public markets. So, that's the opposite of where we need to be and what we need to be doing. So we have a lot of work to do on that side.
Yes, we do. It's not to say everything is perfect, but the fact is that, I think in a lot of ways we're heading towards the right goals. And of course, the status quo is going to push back and try to keep things the way they are so they can basically line their pockets. And I don't think there's anything new about that. I think with the internet and information being as open as it is now, I think that there's a lot more awareness and a bigger countervailing force against it, which makes those elites just dig in deeper and pay more, buy more politicians to keep things the way they are. I mean, there's no reason for these HFTs to exist. There really isn't. They do nothing good for the market. They hurt the market and really undermine the market's primary functions there. I always learned, and you probably did too, there's no guaranteed income, guaranteed system of making money. As soon as you get it in place, somebody comes along or the government comes along and puts an end to it. And that's the way it's kind of been in my life. And why should these guys be any different? But they are different. And that's one of the things that's got to change. And I believe will change. I mean, love him or hate him, Trump has basically hit the nail on the head that why do these hedge fund guys get a free ride and a free tax ride? They pay like little or nothing in taxes because of this carried interest tax dodge that exists, that they had the tax code rewritten, paid to have it rewritten to build in their tax shelter. I mean, if you ever look in the U.S. at the private bills that get passed, those are bills that are not like Social Security or Medicare or whatever. They're bills that are passed for the benefit of a specific party, which is actually legal under the U.S. Constitution. Private bills have been with us since the beginning. There are people that pay no taxes because of these private bills, people that gain their green card because of a private bill. I mean, it's just totally corrupt.
Yeah, and it's always been that way to the extent that there's always been a reason for antitrust legislation for breaking up concentrated entities that start, because exactly this, they start to control the whole system, right? And then it becomes completely unfair and uneven and unequal and everything that's ultimately disastrous for free markets or progress of humanity. So I think this is just another chapter where we're now having to go into this period where we're going to have to break up and rescale things back down. Because, look at Ben Bernanke talking this week about his book, coming out about how he, quote, saved the world. Really, it's just the most disingenuous thing. He added zeros so that guys like Griffin and company and many others could extract even more zeros out of a system, right? Could pay off even higher. Think about it. Like trillion has become just commonplace nowadays. And 10 years ago, we were still amazed by the word billion, Kerry. But we've been through this period where the policymakers threw so many zeros on the ledger sheet, just fabricated out of thin air, that basically everyone that was extracting out became trillionaires and billionaires overnight. And I think we're looking for the mean reversion of that process now, because clearly that's not sustainable. Are we going to be talking about quadrillions any day now here, while the average person is still making less than they made in 1986, Kerry? So, at some point there's, these periods in history where income goes so extreme in both directions ultimately mean revert. And sometimes it can be very painful, lots of social unrest. And other times it just finally people have had enough and get embarrassed enough, I guess. I don't know. I'm not sure how it ultimately gets fixed. All I know is that historically it always has come to an end, and then it goes the other way for a period of years.
And it's going to happen this time too. I totally agree with you on that. I think if you're an average person, you are totally fed up with everything that's going on here. This rape and pillage of society, of the economy. There's just
by non-productive sources, right? Completely non-productive.
Absolutely.
So at a time, Kerry, when we have so much productive stuff going on, so much innovation and leaps and bounds, in all these great things that can serve the world, and it's all looking for capital. And then you've got all these extractors doing nothing but wasting capital. And I think that's the great frustration about this. We've added all these zeros, but they haven't necessarily gone into the pockets that would, like the areas that would greatly advance humanity. So I think that, enough of it, some of it is getting traction. Like we said at the beginning, the internet, the world conversation, the revelation that we're in this all together, that this is a global sphere, really is an enormous help. And that's what makes me believe that ultimately the good people will be able to overcome these very negative forces.
Yeah, well, it's always presented like it's a benefit to the market. Oh, it'll have more liquidity. And that's just such garbage. I mean, it's really out of hand. And
if you listen to the commercials, it's all about, I was trading at lightning speed, and like as if lightning speed has anything to do with anything, except if you're an HFT skimmer.
Yeah, lightning literally looking at going back to Michael Lewis's book, which I love the book. I think he's like one of the best writers of our time in terms of, maybe not stylistically, he's pretty darn good, but in terms of his content and the way he finds the angle on the story, that's just the best thing. I mean, it's not easy to do this. Not anybody can write like that and give you the insight. And he did it with so many things, with like Liar's Poker, and that was Solomon Brothers and John Gutfreund. And then he did it with the new thing. He's done it with sports. And we need to have those insights, because otherwise you never really know what's happening just by reading the media, which is in the pocket of the elites. The media just doesn't, the mainstream media just doesn't serve you anymore.
And also, I think the reason that he's been so effective is that he started out on the inside, right? He started out working just like I did, working on the south side, on the street. And then you know, two things happen. You either come out of that environment going, oh my God, that's so wrong. And I'm going to try and tell everyone how screwed up that is.
What did I do?
Figure out something that's much more moral, if you will, much more serving of people, or you become basically you double down and you become, sociopathic almost. You disconnect all of that from how it actually impacts the real world. And then you don't think about that impact and therefore continue to do all these self-serving, self-destructive things and call it, God's work, like Lloyd Blankfein.
Lloyd Blankfein, right?
That's why Michael Lewis has been so effective, is that he shares that realism and disdain for that aspect of finance.
Yeah, it's really special. And, I just appreciate that when, somebody really makes the effort to tell you the truth and what's really happening. And then you ignore them at your own peril because, hey, this guy has told you what's happening. You either accept it or not. And, oh, by the way, the markets are rigged. Who would have ever thought?
Yeah, that's right. But, as an individual, you don't have to, as the Irish would say, lie with a dog to get fleas. You don't have to do that. You can decide to do more wholesome, healthy things with your lifetime and capital. And I think, if you want to do that, you can. And I think that's what we're all about, is trying to give people other options and point out that they're not victims. They don't have to just, make all these deals with the devil and then pay the consequences. They can try and be more proactive than that. So I think that's good. And I think lots of people are catching on.
Yeah, thank goodness. And it can't end a moment too soon. Unfortunately, these things take on a life of their own, and they have to go through this cycle in order for it to purge itself. And that's what the powers that be have stopped from happening for way too long, is the excesses being purged out of the system. And these declines were always a positive thing in economies, because they got rid of the speculation, the excessive speculation, and the excessive debt. Unfortunately, the system hasn't been allowed to work, and now we're faced with what we're faced with. Anyway, if you want to find out more, make sure you go over to Danielle's site, jugglingdynamite.com. Covers it in depth. There's just so much happening. Just a few things we didn't touch on. The guy from the Brookings Institute getting booted because he's putting out false research that's paid for by the people that he's drawing the conclusions that they want. And that's in every facet of life here, whether it's food, whether it's petroleum. The interests are always out to look to protect their own
buying the academics, right?
Yeah.
That's been the trend. They've been buying the academics. And with that kind of zeros, they can buy a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and they don't have any shortage of takers too, which is really a shame. Whatever happened to integrity. So as always, you'll find a link to Danielle's site on our site, financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Danielle, we will talk to you in a couple of weeks. Be well.
Thanks, Kerry. Bye.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.